Coming up on Newsnight, it's June 1st, 2012, and it's the last show of our 2011-2012 season. Well, it won't be the last time that we talk about education, whether it's money woes, whether it's accountability, or whether it's pride. We'll also touch on fracking, exotic animal legislation, third frontier money, casinos and racinos springing up all over the state, and a tip of the hat to Eric Mansfield, our friend and our colleague. That's next on Newsnight. Good evening, and welcome to Newsnight for June 1st. We've got lots to talk about on this evening's show, and three of my favorite talkers are here joining us. We have Steve Hoffman with the Akron Beacon-Journal, Stephanie Warsmith, also with the Akron Beacon-Journal, and the inimitable Ed Esposito with WAKR Radio.
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Well, hey, there you go. What are you going to do?
You got a cool adjective.
Because I was running out of words, so, you know, what can I tell you?
She's being sweet to me today.
Yeah, thank you. I want to start with education. There were a couple of things this week that happened in terms of the Akron Public Schools, and I wondered if any of you were struck by the dichotomy of the Pride Rally, the APS Pride Rally, and then a program of which they are justifiably proud, the anti-bullying program, that they have to cut. So, Steph, you covered the rally.
Right, and they technically didn't want to call it their kickoff levy rally, but you know, they were there raising funds and soliciting volunteers. So I think it was definitely a rally the supporters event before the big levy push coming up in November. They invited all the parents and students and staff to the rally. So, but then obviously this week we found out that the bullying program that has gotten national recognition in Akron for Akron Public Schools is one of the things that's going to be cut, and I do think that it's certainly a shame. But at the same time, what the school people said was that, hey, it's not required, and when we are getting down to cutting this much, we have to go with what are we required, what are the bare minimums of what we have to provide.
How about the numbers of people at that rally? Was it a good turnout?
It was a good turnout. There were quite a few students, teachers, parents who were there, and a lot of them that I talked to were concerned about what is going to happen with this round of cuts that they are already doing now, and then if the levy doesn't pass when they have another deficit they're facing in the next school year, how the cuts might go deeper. And so, they were saying we're ready to get out and fight and do our part, to see if we can get this levy passed.
Well, meanwhile, besides the irony of the bullying program being cut, you also have a continued inability at the state level to make much progress. The state got a waiver from No Child Left Behind. This is not unexpected, and many other states have received a waiver, but basically it's an admission that this ambitious goal, the ambitious goals of No Child Left Behind are I don't know what word you want to use, not really attainable. And part of that is due to a lack of resources. There was a group also that rallied in Columbus this week with a renewed plea for a funding formula that works, which the Kasich administration has promised. We've been through several different iterations, if you will, most recently from the Strickland administration. The Kasich people came in. I forget what was the Strickland plan called. It had a name.
Yeah, I can't recall.
I can't
It's
remember.
the gathered dust on the top of the file cabinet.
Yeah, well, it was in effect for a while, but never really funded. So
well, they then did away with it.
Right,
the Kasich
yeah, and so they've promised a new approach. I guess they're still working on it.
Look, these are all easy decisions and programs to make when the tide is high, when there's lots of money. But when there's not a lot of money, you have to make hard decisions. The fact is, on the bullying, anti-bullying, not every school had those programs in place.
But they're valid programs, Ed. That's the problem.
Jody,
when you're dealing with kids,
there's absolutely no question that they're valid programs. But when you talk to voters, you know what voters say? Voters say, I'm willing to pay for reading, writing, and arithmetic. Now, there may be a disconnect in voters understanding the needs of today's education versus the log cabin. and that's acceptable. That's a valid point to make. But they're the ones that are voting, and they want you to concentrate on the basics right now. I think it was smart politically to have this rally. It gave them an opportunity to get video interviews from people. It was like preaching to the choir down there. It's not like you had people down there that voted no. So, I mean, you weren't trying to change any minds out there. But the board, the good news is that they had a squeaker of a loss last time, so that gives them some momentum going in forward that you don't have as high to climb, that you've already helped make your case. They need to continue to reinforce that case. They need to help people see that how this is more than reading, writing, arithmetic, and that you're taking care of reading and writing and arithmetic. I thought the powerful things coming out recently regarding the Akron schools was the Ohio graduation test, where that was the best showing ever by Akron Public Schools. I think that's the kind of thing, that's currency in a voter's mind when it's like, okay, you are teaching the kids, they are graduating from school. It's not like Cleveland where half the kids don't even get to the senior level.
Is the currency of the mayor and Marco Somerville and political leaders, does that also help in an effort to pass a levy like this?
Steve and I, and Stephanie, you may disagree. I don't think it makes much difference. I think the people that are going to vote for the levy, it's whether the mayor's for it or not, I think it helps in terms of organization. I think it helps in terms of raising money. If you're going to have video of supporters and you're going to do a campaign on behalf of the levy, politically you have to have money to pay for that. Yeah, I mean, you should be able to pay for newspaper ads. You should be able to pay for radio and TV, direct mail, lawn signs. I mean, everyone assumes that these things just pop up like fall flowers, but they don't. Someone has to make them and buy them and pay for them. So in terms of having a political machine behind them like the mayor or Marco Somerville or the rest of city council, that's important. That helps raise money.
Yeah, I think the key to most school levies, but especially in big cities, is you want to find the people who are your supporters and make sure that they turn out. The turnout's going to be pretty good this fall. And the danger is that, when you get this rising tide of voters, you're going to pick up some anti-tax people.
Right.
So to counteract that, you really need to get your supporters out. And that's, as you mentioned, Ed, I mean, the mayor's endorsement, may not, sway this thing on its own. But the machinery that is brought to bear by these political organizations, I mean, all kidding aside about the mayor, I mean, the reason he and Marco Somerville and their team keep getting reelected is that they know where the votes are.
Well, they're well-oiled. They know how to get it done.
Yeah.
He does have a bully pulpit, so when he goes to places, I mean, the fact is when you keep on repeating that message over and over and over again, maybe it gets through. But I don't think that's the primary reason for it. I think the primary reason is to keep people focused and try and build momentum.
Yeah. Just real quickly, I mean, one of the big questions in my mind is as the economy, changes in Akron, whether people are really grasping, making the connection between the education system and the economy. And that is a huge plus. If that point can be driven across that, no, not everybody needs to get a PhD. Not everyone needs to get a college degree even. But we have to move these kids to graduate from high school and even go on to get some sort of post-secondary education.
That is certainly a message that the mayor was making at the event the other night, and I know has often said.
And the Chamber of Commerce has been pretty, I think, in front and will endorse it. The question is, how do you move that momentum so it's more than just we're going to send out a news release and our board voted to endorse this?
And get the people to the polls who are going to vote for it.
Where it's action. I mean, the Chamber of Commerce it can be a powerful tool in this. Now, the issue is you have members of the Chamber that may or may not support this. The Chamber of Commerce is a regional group, so you have to make an argument that the fate of Akron schools has a regional impact. So, yeah, it does impact somebody in Hudson. It does impact somebody in Springfield Township, what happens in Akron.
Well, it'll be a continuing discussion, I'm sure, here on NewsNite.
For more NewsNite content, including extended discussions, full interviews, and the chance to speak your mind about the issues, join us online at newsnight.net.
There are lots of pieces and parts we want to touch on in this next segment of NewsNite, and I want to start the conversation with fracking. There's been a bill now that I think is sitting on Governor Kasich's desk that's going to impact how fracking is done in the state of Ohio. Will he sign it? Is it good? Are environmentalists going to be happy?
Well, The answer to your first question is yes, he will sign it. No, not all of the environmentalists are completely happy.
But neither are the oil and gas companies, so does this make it a good piece of legislation?
We'll see. I mean, I think that the big issue with the environmentalists has to do with disclosure. Because these wells, besides millions of gallons of water, when you frack these wells, there are also chemicals and sand forced down to break up these rock layers. So the big question is what's... and these
are those chemicals?
The chemicals are
what are the chemicals?
Toxic and cancer-causing. So to make a long story short, the industry was given a break on their what they would call a trade secret. They think some of this goo that they use is proprietary. So it's not easy to get at this information, unfortunately. You have to sue, basically, to get the exact formula for this, whatever additive they're using that's special. So this could cause some problems. There was a deal worked out with physicians. The doctors weren't happy about their access to information if they were treating a patient. They seem to have resolved that. I'm told yesterday the State Medical Association is reasonably happy. So if you're a physician, you can, and you treating a patient that you think is sick because of fracking, some chemical, you can call the manufacturer. They're supposed to give you the information. Now, whether that happens quickly remains to be seen. Also, the doctors are assured that if they have a duty to inform other medical personnel about these chemicals, that they can do so. So it's not everything, it's not this cradle-to-grave system that the governor originally had in mind for tracking these chemicals, but it's not bad.
Yeah, I think the environmentalists too wanted double the amount of space regarding
From
it's 1,500 feet. They wanted 3,000
for
feet.
Testing?
Testing for the area.
Right.
So I think that's an issue, but I kind of think Steve's point, if both sides aren't happy, that means it's probably something that's halfway decent. But the health issue, though, is kind of interesting because if you look at the impact of these chemicals, it's not necessarily the chemicals in your water and you get sick immediately. So, from a business perspective, there are trade secret issues here, as to what your formulation is when you do this. I think there's a valid point to that needs to be addressed. I also think, though, there is a long-term impact on some of these chemicals. You don't know, if you're drinking the water over 20 years, does it pose a health? And I mean, that's obviously something that plaintiffs' lawyers will have a field day with 20 years from now if people start coming down sick.
Yeah, the trick is if you're a owner, a property owner, you have a well on your property, or you're an adjacent property owner, you need to pre-test your water well, and then theoretically you could sue and get a complete look at the chemicals, and then you could begin to track, do further tests on your well and begin to track, what's going on. The better method, I think, I agree with the Ohio Environmental Council and others, that probably it would have been better to require the drillers to disclose everything, including their trade secrets. Put it in a file at the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. The file would not be accessible unless there was an emergency of some sort. Then the ODNR would be the conduit for an immediate release. Rather than have, I mean, you can imagine. Let's say you're some doctor out in Norton or wherever. You call Chesapeake. I don't even know where their headquarters is. Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Yeah. So you get some secretary on the phone. And they say, "Who?"
Right.
And immediately the call goes to their corporate counsel. Well, 3 days later, you might get a call back.
But I also think the way the system works, if the doctor makes a call to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, then if ODNR is calling Oklahoma, I think they're going to get their answers a little bit faster.
Well, along with gas and oil wells springing up all over the state, we have had a lot of casinos. We've got 2 of the casinos open, and now a casino down in south of Columbus is opening. These are springing up all over the state. What's the impact? What do you guys think this is going to do? Well,
interestingly, the decision came out this week about challenging the group. What's the name of the group, Steve?
Roundtable.
Roundtable that has been
Ohio
opposed. Ohio Roundtable has been opposed to casinos all along and led the effort when there was another ballot issue several years ago to try to allow casinos, and they were successful that time at keeping them out of the state. Now, obviously, they haven't been successful. They challenged the racinos in court and lost. That could still be appealed. But right now what you're seeing is you're seeing the rollout of the casino opening in Cleveland and Toledo, and now the first Racino is opening back in my stomping grounds in Columbus as well.
But there's money to be paid to the communities for all these casinos opening.
Well, not only that, you're going to see that in a big way up in my neck of the woods, which is up in northern Summit County, because now all of a sudden Northfield's going to become, Hard Rock Casino heaven.
Right.
I still don't know how that's going to play out. It'll be interesting to see that. But I mean, all of a sudden now you're going to have building going on. You're going to have construction jobs. So there's going to be one of those quick hit, maybe 18 months, 2 years worth to get that up and going, and that's going to happen around a lot of other racetracks too. It also brings other communities into the racing or into the gambling fold. Quite frankly, that were cut out when the constitutional amendment was approved, when it was only 4. Now it's going to be 12, wasn't it? 8 Racino sites,
I think, yes.
around the state.
7.
7.
So there are 7.
But regardless of this, you have 4 major casinos, and then you have another 7 mini casinos where you can watch a horse race too, allegedly.
There was this big gambling bill that finally made it through before the legislature adjourned. They're probably going to come back this month to clean up loose edges. But there was a big question about community impact, because the casino amendment does have language that gives the cities where a casino is located some money.
And they're already drooling over it.
Oh, yeah.
You can feel the drool coming out of the paper when you read it in the morning.
There will be money. There's money in a casino settlement fund that will go to the communities that have the racinos for a couple of years. To help them with the transition. Then the legislature is continuing to grapple with ongoing funding for local communities. Columbus will not get any special money because it already has a casino. So the legislature figured, but Northfield and the otother communities will get the money. The question is, after the first 2 years, where do you get the money? And locally, Ron Amstutz from Worcester, he's the chairman of the Finance Committee in the House. He has raised some pretty serious questions about diverting lottery money for other purposes, for treatment of gambling addiction, for community impact, and other legislators feel that this is fine. You can do this, but his point is that when the voters passed the lottery, very clearly that this was going to go to education. Period. Right. So we'll see. My guess, this being Ohio, someone will sue, and we'll figure it out later.
Well, when we've already seen from Columbus, there's a nice propensity to get something passed under some rules and then decide to actually run the program under others.
You think?
Well, the other issue that we still have out there that is very interesting for our area is whether there could be another Racino if they move Thistledown elsewhere. From the Medina, what's the Medina area where it is now?
No, it's in North Randall.
North Randall.
Cuyahoga County.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
But they're talking about possibly moving that, and they were looking at the property in Greene, and then there's been all these rumors that, could be on Goodyear property, or Rolling Acres has been mentioned, and so you've got that out there as well, that, we might end up with another Racino in our area.
Well, one of the things that we didn't get a chance to talk on is the third frontier money that I know you're very interested in. So we're going to move this portion of our discussion to NewsNite.net.
On NewsNite.net, we cover a broader range of topics than we can on the air in 27 minutes. Be part of the conversation on our Facebook page and at NewsNite.net.
One of the topics that we've discussed frequently here on Newsnight is Rothrock Road and the potential movement of a Walmart out of Fairlawn into Copley. And June 1st, today, is when the first of what could be a number of trials starts with respect to Copley Township and the city of Fairlawn. What's going to happen in the trial today?
Ooh, boy. Get
out our crystal balls.
That's right. I think the vast majority, with except of 1 or 2 of the charges or counts in the civil case, have been dismissed from the individual, and I think there's one big case that's involved that's actually Copley Township versus Fairlawn, but most of the Copley Township charges have been, or points in this case have been dismissed. So what it really comes down to is Rothrock Road really a just a street, or is it really a road that serves a bigger public purpose? And if it serves a bigger public purpose, if you can make an argument that it's for commerce and EMS and public safety and all that stuff, then Fair Lawn loses. If you come out and say, you know what, it's just a street and you're going through a neighborhood to get to the Walmart and their gas pumps, then Copley Township wins.
So what happens to the neighbors in this whole mix? Because aren't the neighbors the ones who are most affected by this potential move?
Yeah, I mean, to Ed's point, I mean, I think at one point, you know, sort of when Montrose was not Montrose, this was just a residential street, basically.
Right.
You know, I mean, I've lived here over 30 years, and I can remember when it was a pretty quiet area back in there.
But it was a residential street on one side in Fair Lawn and a business or a commercial district on the other side.
I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube here. I mean, forget Walmart. Even the way things exist now, with what there's, you know, what there is now. I mean, that road feeds is an entrance, granted from the rear, but it's a major entrance to a major shopping area. So to me, this is an unfortunate example, and I've said this a million times, I'll say it again, it's an unfortunate example of bad planning, of an area that is balkanized among different jurisdictions who should have gotten together years ago with a comprehensive plan, including a transportation plan for Montrose. They didn't, and now, you know, you had Copley with a certain zoning in place. I mean, Copley just didn't spot zone this. I mean, this has been zoned this way
for decades.
Yeah.
They had 20 years, I think, or so.
So you have all these things that have happened under this old system. So you have a nice residential area and a commercial area right next to each other, you know, with very little planning. And now push has come to shove. And my guess is that, you know, Bill Roth did what he thought was right for his voters. You know, he's an elected person. What the heck do you think he's going to do?
Well, plus, you know, throw in the other thing. I mean, there's also a loss of revenue to the city. Fair Lawn's hurt when Walmart moves out.
Exactly.
Again, though, I go back, what about the neighbors who bought their homes on the one side of the road and thought that they were going to be protected?
Jody, here's the deal. If you buy a parcel of property that's zoned residential, and right next door there's a parcel of property that's zoned retail commercial, and you build a great house and you start raising your kids, and 5 years later the guy who owns the next piece of property comes over and starts building a 7-Eleven, you knew what you were getting into when you did this. Does it make you happy? No. Are you honked off about it? No. But you look at all those houses that are built back and have been developed in off Rothrock Road, all of that was done knowing on the other side of the street, at some point that grassland isn't just going to be grassland. You know, I mean, welcome to America. You got a piece of property and it's zoned for business use. You're an idiot if you don't develop it at some point for business use. People don't own land just because they like to see grass grow. People own land because they're either going to live on it or they're going to earn a living from it.
But I agree with Steve that, you know, it seems like, you know, in these communities out here, you have so many different ones that are sort of on top of each other, and you know, the development is good, and they're just letting people come in and they want the tax revenue, but then you get to a certain point where it's like, oops, you know, we probably should have had some more forethought, some more discussion going into this about, you know, the transportation issues and the residential and how it was going to overlap with the commercial. And it's like, you know, why did those discussions not happen? Why wasn't there any forethought into, you know, what are we going to do when it gets, you know, too developed out here?
Yeah, I mean, the alternative, you know, if Rothrock Road is permanently barricaded, you know, the alternative is going to be to come down 18,
right,
and which is already a mess.
Right.
So you're pushing all that traffic out there. It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. I mean, I'm not necessarily defending Walmart in this, although, you know, people have been upset that they're moving, what, about a mile away.
Right.
Right.
But the thing about Walmart is, to Ed's point about, you know, private property, and it's not our job, it's not Bill Roth's job, it's not Copley Township's job to do Walmart's financial planning. Right. Walmart made a decision, apparently in their minds a rational decision, that the location they were in Fair Lawn, was not serving their purpose. They found another parcel properly zoned nearby, and they're ready to rock and roll. So it's sort of hard to say, oh, gee, time out. I mean, I guess the way to really attack this, and I'm not familiar with all the ins and outs of these suits or what's been in and what's been dismissed, but you know, I think to really kill this thing, you'd have to attack the zoning in Copley Township and somehow overturn that zoning decision that's been in place for what?
20 years.
For 20 years.
Yeah, and say, oopsie doopsie, this zoning is really, really wrong and it's going to revert to something else. At which point the developer, Levy, is going to say, "You're that
it's a taking."
Then
It's
you
a
have
taking.
an economic
Exactly.
harm, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So pay me.
You end up with another lawsuit.
Exactly.
Yeah. You want this land not to go to that purpose? Fine, we'll grow grass. You buy it.
We've got about a minute left, and I do want to acknowledge and have each of you weigh in on this. Our colleague and friend Eric Mansfield and his broadcast career change.
Yeah, good for Eric. I mean, I'm sorry to see him go as a newsman. He spoke to my class at Kent this semester, and as I told them, you know, Eric was not to me just another pretty face, as some people in broadcast are. Certainly I'm not, but in commercial broadcasting, Eric was a good newsman, and that was the foundation of his skills. And that I'll be sorry to see. I'm sure the viewers will be sorry to see that go.
I have a colleague at the Beacon, Jim Carney, who I think of as Mr. Akron, but I think of Eric as Mr. Akron of the broadcast world. I mean, he really had a passion for news in Akron, and so I am going to miss him in that role, although I obviously wish him good luck in his new gig as well.
Eric will do a fantastic job, and it'll be a lot easier for him now to get to Stephanie and Steve's classes.
Well, he will, and we will definitely miss him, but we wish him a lot of luck. And we thank you for joining us. Steve, Stephanie, Ed, thank you for always making this a pleasure. We had a wonderful show. We will see you back here in the fall. Have a good summer. Good night.